Hello, everyone. I'm Niels, and this is Dominic. We're both from QCOM. We're today talking about how you can use Einstein Analytics to really get your workflows more easy, how to make it easy for your users to use your workflows you're building. And okay, Dominic?
Yeah. Hi guys, I'm Dominic, and we're both working for an ISV partner located in Germany. So there's going to be typos and bad grammar, but bear with us, it's going to be fun. Today's agenda. First off, we'll want to give you a short and simplified introduction to what Einstein Analytics is. And then we're going to dive right into our demo scenarios we prepared for you. So Einstein Analytics. It's an analytics tool for Salesforce, which handles really large sets of data. And you could use it as a data processing engine with an UI. It comes with a builder for fancy dashboards, and it brings its own new query language called SQL. And in its core, Einstein Analytics is built of a very few key components, which is a data set. This is where your data is stored in a denormalized way. We got our queries, that's what the actual analyzation takes place with SQL. We got lenses, this is which queries are displayed, and of course our fancy dashboards. In addition to the key components, Einstein Analytics comes with two SDKs, which is the Web and the Apex SDK. And in general, it lets you communicate with Einstein Analytics from all across your Salesforce ecosystem. So the Web SDK is basically a way to control the behavior of a lens or a dashboard, and it lets you easily interact with analytics from your custom applications, such as Lightning components or Visualforce pages. And the Apex SDK is all about data, yay. You can query all data and analytics from basically any Apex class you got. So what are we going to do today? We prepared two demo scenarios. The first would be how to build and leverage a customer rating flow. And the second would be how to create upsell opportunities. So let's start with the first example. So we have Acme, and Acme wants their sales and service teams focusing on the right customers. And the solution they're heading for is an account rating system, and to actually implement that, we need a really good overview about the customer. So we're using Einstein Analytics dashboards to serve the users the insights they need. And with Lightning components and flows, the dashboard can be right next to the decision. So this is a pretty raw screenshot of our final solution we're heading for, just in case we're running into some technical issues or something like that, so we would come back to it later. So in the first step, Niels is going to show us how we create a lens on a data set which contains all opportunities. And then we're going to build a dashboard that we then want to display to the user.
Okay, let's start. And you should see my browser now.
It's glitching. Yeah, here we go.
Okay. So let's go to the I'm sorry about this mess.
Issues.
Okay, so let's go to the dataset we want to build our lens on, which we want to later display to the user. Okay, we start with count of rows is kind of boring. So maybe let's sum the value of the opportunities and split it up by the type, and maybe have a second split like the status, the stage in opportunities. So this is in German org, and if you create a data set in a German org once, you can't change it any later back to English or whichever language without messing around with everything. So it stays essentially like this. If you sign up from Germany, you get a German org and you're done with it. Okay, so now we've built our very basic thing. Maybe we just want to copy it over in a new dashboard. Put it in. Give it some love, maybe make a stacked bar out of it. And then just save it as whatever dashboard. Don't save it in your private app, because if you do so, your users won't have fun with their dashboards.
So you really want to make sure to save it as a shared app.
And on the other hand, don't share put any information in a shared dashboard which you don't want to have to share to everyone who has access to the thing where you put it in. Because Einstein Analytics isn't following your sharing settings you have set in Salesforce, which I think is, on the one hand, a good thing. On the other hand, be careful with it, otherwise you will end up sharing information. Maybe also, if you have a community user in, you can also share it with a community cloud user. So maybe you're sharing information with your customer, or even worse, with information about one customer with another customer. So take care when you're using it. Okay, we have now a dashboard, so let's get back to the slides.
All right, nice, thank you. So now we got our lens and our dashboard running, and in the next step, we want to create a generic reusable Lightning component to actually host the dashboard to the user. So there's going to be some code showing up.
So the code in the end, this is all the code we need to display it in the flow, which you saw on the first screenshot. In the end, you have some attributes, which are just so you can set them from the outside and have something more generic. And then we have the wave dashboard component, which has essentially a few attributes like filter, which I will come back later, show header, show title, record ID, and dashboard ID. I think I think the record ID, yeah, it is where the filter criteria later pulls out the $field name fields. We will use $ID, which is, I think, pretty much the most used filter criteria. You want to narrow down on an object or an account or whatever. Dashboard ID, yeah, it's a dashboard you want to display. Filter, I will explain how you build them, but they're quite simple also. You can use them to, on the one hand, to filter down criteria, which to filter down the data which is pulled from the data set into your dashboard, or you could also use it to set filter things like if you have a date filter field on your dashboard, you can also set it from the outside to decent values, whatever. And show header and show title we just set on false, so it don't blows up your UI too much without adding any information in the most cases. And then we have also a design to the component, because otherwise you can't set the values out of flow. And if you have a design, you can use it from flow. And maybe just one thing I forget about the dashboard, about the component, it is the lightning.flow available for screens. This is really important, otherwise you can't use it in flow. And if you have it in, you can use it in every flow you want. And I think the cool thing about it, we just built a wrapper around a standard component. You can do this with most of the components. You will break some, but most of them work in different contexts, even if they aren't designed to work there. So let's get to the filter, which is, in this case, really basic. We just filter the opportunity data set on the field account ID, and the operator is matches, and in the list we just have one ID, which is $ID, which is essentially the ID of the account, and the ID we passed over with the record ID field on the wave.dashboard component. Okay, so let's get to the flow and finish it. So we are now in the flow designer. We just go to our screen step, say add a field, say we drag in a lightning component, give it a name, select the lightning component, and here we see ours now in the C namespace, the Einstein Analytics host component. Then we have some attributes to set. I have created earlier constants which contain just the values I explained earlier. And the record ID is just also the record ID we got from the Lightning flow. When it starts, it passes you the record ID in the record ID field, and yeah, go on with it. And don't forget to delete on the second page the attributes you don't need. They come up per default and stop you saving everything. Save as a new version. Okay.
Yeah, just skip the warnings.
Yeah. Activate it, and now let's have a look. We go to this account, saying, okay, I want to put in the account rating. Now we see our Einstein Analytics loading. We see now narrowed down to this account. The values, we can say, okay, it looks quite hot. Say next. And if we look now in the details, we see the updated rating. Okay, let's get back to the slides.
Nice, thank you. So before we're gonna get to the next example, let's take a quick recap. So in the first step, we created a dashboard. Then we created a generic reusable Lightning component. And in the last step, Niels just extended the flow with our dashboard. So the second example, now that Acme has rated accounts, the account rating and usage data are correlating with which products the customer wants to buy next. In this case, that would be a maintenance and support package we prepared. So Acme now seeks a way to easily create an upsell opportunity with the included products. What?
So this time we won't use the flow action. We will go to actually using Circle.
Exactly.
And the Apex SDK, so doing the same, closely the same stuff, but in a more automated way.
Exactly. The first step, we're going to look for the ID and the version ID of the data set, and believe me, you're going to love this one. It's crazy. And again, we're using a Lightning component as our front end. But some additional slides about the Apex SDK because we're using it. In its core, the Apex SDK consists of two core components, which is the execute query. You basically can pass any SQL query to it, and it will execute it. And it's the query builder. So Salesforce says it's the most convenient, preferred, and safest way to construct SQL queries. But just to get not too complex, for our example, we're going to create the query as a string. But the query builder would be your first place to go if you want to try it out.
So why we want to use, in this case, Circle, and we aren't using Apex and to analyze the stuff, and why we don't use a normal SQL query on the objects we've previously loaded into analytics. I think we can't work with really big amounts of data in Apex. It's quite limited if you get to decent points. our execution time is one of the limits which you hit on more complex situations really fast. I think it's around 6 seconds, which is quite a lot, but if you're doing too much processing, you're just blowing it up. And it's a bit faster than doing everything in Apex, because you're not slowing down your whole org because you have some jobs which are taking off, I don't know, hours to complete because they're just at futuring whatever, just to get around the limits. So just use something else. And I think one thing is also, if you have Einstein Analytics in place, why not use it? You have your data there in a way where you wanted it to use it, to display it, why not use it in your processes? So this is where we are heading for, which is essentially we are displaying a product and you can create an opportunity with this product. It's quite basic and we won't go how to build this because we won't talk about how to build a Lightning component. Okay, so let's get to the dataset ID. Back to Einstein Analytics. Okay, so we've built previously this lens, and we're now opening up our developer console.
This is going to be good.
Then we say, okay, we want to enable the logging.
Yeah, you have to set edge.log. What was it?
Enabled.
Enabled
to true.
Equals true.
And then edge.log.query to true. Okay, we've enabled both of them. Then we need to change something like, okay, we want now the average. And then we get our query as the first logging statement. And here we have our both IDs, which I just marked, which is one is the dataset ID and the other one is the dataset version ID. This is the easiest way to get to this. You could also go over some APIs to get it, but if you just need it once, it's this way. You can't refer it like with the name or whatever, like you're doing it when you go to the query builder here. You can't use the name for, say, yeah, load opportunities. It's not working. It's when you're using the Apex SDK at the moment. It's crashed again. Sorry.
Just skip through. Oh, we mirrored.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So now that we got our dataset ID, let's get to the code we need to build. Yeah, we just built a method which is our enabled, so it must be static. We are passing the account ID, and then we are building our query as a string. The first line is just saying, yeah, I want to load this dataset, which with the two IDs we got previously. Then we say, okay, I want to filter on the customer number.id, which is essentially the customer number, because we were importing records from another system and merging it in the data flow. So, and in the system we exported the data from, it was Kundennummer, the name of the relationship, and which essentially says customer number, sorry. Then we are grouping it by the name, which is, we are just doing the grouping, so we are allowed to later sum over it, and then we are doing a sum over the days open. Yeah, essentially this is our SQL query now. Then we use the Connect API wave execute query to execute this query. push it into a connect API literal JSON, then serialize it, and in the end, we serialize our result and give it back to our Lightning component. The thing is, while we're serializing it, it's working much better if you're passing strings around to Lightning and back and forth instead of using any type of objects. Objects often get stuck, or you get errors you can't understand while parsing it or whatever. So better do the parsing by your own. This is the thing, how to parse the answer you get from the Apex SDK from your query. You need to put away something which is around it, and so you're getting to some explicit, implicit casting, whatever. In the end, this code looks much more much harder than it is. It's just messing around with the JSON stuff.
So let's take a quick recap of the second demo. So we rated an account based on several business critical factors using Einstein Analytics. And we semi-automatically created an upsell opportunity for support and maintenance packages based on the results we got from Einstein Analytics.
I think I would just jump into the demo I forgot about. Okay, so we created now, we use the component we created as Lightning action, so we can just click it and say, okay, I want to have an upsell opportunity. Okay, Platin support, nice, great opportunity. And there we are. Just a thing why we've done it this way and not fully automated. You can't do a DML statement after you have done a SQL query. This is really a breakpoint at the moment with the SQL stuff. You can't use it in triggers. There are ways to use it in triggers which are essentially exploiting how you can trigger at future methods and how you can trigger. I think you also need the event bus. So you start to mess around with everything just to get the answer from a SQL query directly used inside an object you want to save. So the way you can go is you display it to the user and then you give an opportunity to easily use your information you just gave to the user. You always need a different execution context to work further with this data.
Right.
I'm sorry, I have no idea what's happening.
You all know this, right? It happens to all of us.
Okay.
Wait. Wait. No, we're good.
Okay, so what have we talked about? I think mostly about the different Einstein Analytics SDKs, especially about the Apex SDK, and when we were using the Lightning component with the Wave dashboard component, there we were also using the
Web SDK.
The Web SDK, but not in an explicit way. It was hidden, but this is essentially what this component does. We had some SQL. We didn't explain it so much because, yeah, in the end, you need to find out what you want to have, and then it's getting complex. You can't.
Yeah, we basically didn't want to get too technical. Nice.
It's quite disturbing. Then we had a Lightning Flow action, or a Lightning Flow with a Lightning component in the flow, which I think is one of the coolest features which came out in the last releases, because it really gives you a way to interact with your users in flows instead of hard coding 100 or more tiles on this crappy flow builder. So I think this is the point where flow gets usable again and also brings you something more than just a click-through path. Okay, thanks for listening. Are there any questions?
All right. I think if something comes up, you can meet with us outside or, yeah, just have a cigarette or a beer with us. With those 3 files. Thank you. Oh, wait.